Yo, what is going on, guys? Jay Kwan here, and welcome to another week's episode of Locals Matchups. All right, so this time around we got Ruby Sapphire versus Emerald Steel, and personally, I'm not actually going to be in any of these games myself, so we are actually going to be commentating over a game of two friends here that are playing against each other in locals, which is awesome because first time I can finally commentate a game that I'm not in, so I can be surprised with you guys and just have a more authentic reaction with things, right? So yeah, because of that though, I don't actually have access to any of their deck lists. I could try to ask, and if they are willing to give it, then I will link it down in the description below. But if not, feel free to go on Dreamborn or Inkdex to kind of give yourself a better idea of the foundations to actually build some of these types of decks. All right, so it looks like with the Ruby Sapphire player, he does choose to go first, and he starts it off with your usual Popsicle play on turn 1, and perhaps we'll probably see a ramp on turn 2. And the Emerald Steel player plays down a Captain Hook. So I believe when I was talking to him, he does play a more lower to the ground Emerald Steel deck. So nothing too high in terms of cost, and playing probably like docks, Captain Hooks, Smees, just a lot of lower to the ground stuff. So we're probably not going to see too many things like muses or anything like that. All right, so generally in this matchup, Ruby Sapphire is favored. Just due to the fact that, for the Emerald Steel player, when they play out Diablo Shifts and the Prince Johns and a bunch of the other smaller characters, right? So a lot of things can be hit by Big Sisu, and they can completely, have their board be wiped in one go. So let's just say if, you're in this particular matchup, and you're the Emerald Steel player, you just want to be able to quest down as quick as possible, hopefully get up to that 10 lore, and then from there, just kind of stabilize the board turn after turn and consistently taking out the opponent's hand as well. Because again, like we're playing, discard, right? So we're gonna have the Prince John, we're gonna have access to all of the discard cards. And in this matchup, you just want to wait until maybe there's 1 or 2 cards left in the Ruby Sapphire's hand before we start to rip things out. And if we can do that consistently, then we can really slow down the Ruby Sapphire player, right? Again, I played Emerald Steel myself quite a bit, so I have a pretty good general idea of this matchup. I've been playing that matchup in the past as well, and it is definitely an uphill battle, especially, again, like if you don't have Diablo early on and you don't have a Cove to put the Diablo in, right? So it looks like so far though, based off of the Emerald Steel player, he's just going like double Smee and double Captain Hook. So super low to the ground. Like yes, those cards are really good in some matchups. But in this case, again, we really want to find the Diablos, right? Because the Diablo is going to capitalize on the draw that Hiram gets and those popsicles that come down as well. Now the Ruby Sapphire player here is incredibly seasoned. He has been using Ruby Sapphire for as long as I knew him, and he's one of the best players in our local meta here. So he knows the matchup quite well. So I'm excited to see kind of his game plan and kind of his thought process with watching this game on how he actually handles different types of board states. So unfortunately, it looks like, I don't know, like maybe our buddy here who's playing Emerald Steel just didn't shuffle their deck properly, but I'm seeing like triple Smees and double Captain Hooks, and I'm seeing like no no Emerald cards right now. So you got a Maui that comes down, takes out the Smee, and he chooses to heal with Popsicle. Yeah, that way if he has Smee or Captain Hook try to go into the Maui, he won't be able to do a clean one-for-one trade. He will need to throw two characters into that Maui if he wants to take it out. Just because after healing Maui with that Popsicle, I believe the Maui only has one willpower left. All right, so there it is. Got the strength of a Raging Fire coming down, taking out that Maui. And he's going to be questing for 4 here, bringing him up to 9. Personally, right now, like looking at this game state, he does pass turn, but I think what I would have done better would be questing with those Captain Hooks, because we just took out a Maui, right? So the chances that he has another rush character in his hand, unless he's playing the Dinless, is very unlikely. And he would have to throw in the Tipo and the Harm into one of the Captain Hooks if he wants to take it out, right? So therefore, there's not really too much that he can really do to take out those Captain Hooks if you were to quest. So in my opinion, that would have gone you up to 11. And I believe the Ruby Sapphire player had about 7 ink, give or take. So again, you're also in like big Sisu range as well, right? So you just want to capitalize on getting as much lore as possible before that comes down and starts to board wipe you. And it looks like with the Emerald Steel player, you know, again, because he's not actually getting too many Emerald cards, his draws are very limited. Because as you can see, he shot the Storm into the Tipo, drawing only 1 card, and really trying to dig deeper into the deck for Diablo or Prince John plus a discard, or even the docks, right? The two drop docks that allow you to discard your hand and draw 2. Because the only problem is that, yeah, in this particular matchup, again, like when it comes to Hiram, and once he starts getting you all that card draw with those popsicles, it's very, very hard to come back. And it almost cancels out any sort of discards that you would have done previously in the game, right? Okay, so he drops the new Tamatoa 6-drop, adding 2 popsicles from the discard into the hand, allowing him to slowly start to see more and more cards from his deck, right? So that's why Tamatoa 6-drop is just incredibly broken, because it just essentially is like a 8-drop, draw 2 in a way, right? And then now Hiram can quest, and then get rid of that popsicle to draw an additional 2 more cards, right, if he really wants to. There's just so many ways to replenish your hand as a Ruby Sapphire player. Like I've seen a Ruby Sapphire player go from top deck mode into maybe 4 or 5 cards and back into the hand in 1 turn. It's insane. All right, so playing a Merfolk, and at this point, I'm praying that a big Sisu doesn't get dropped, or else it's gonna wipe everything out. Okay, so we're strengthening the Medusa. I think he's just really trying to slow down the opponent as much as possible. But see, this is what I mean as well, right? Like, if you would have quested with the Captain Hooks a turn earlier, you would have been at 15 by now, right? If those Captain Hooks live, they would have quested 2 from last turn, and then another 2 this turn, bringing you up to 15 lore, putting you in the lethal range, making the Ruby Sapphire a lot more reactive to try to get rid of your board, rather than trying to establish his own things, and you know, gaining back a lot of resources, like those card draws from the Harims and the Tamatoa. Okay, so Sisu 3-drop comes down and takes out the Merfolk, and then a Brawl comes down. Wow. Okay, plays an Azurite Sea, draws a card and can ink an additional time. And Popsicle is going to heal that Tamatoa as well. That way the Captain Hook is not going to be able to take it out in 1 go. Strength's a strength? Okay. And plays, we don't talk about Bruno. So bounces a card back to the hand, and then the opponent randomly discards a card in their hand. Maui Half Shark gets chosen. Okay, it's pretty good. Definitely would have liked to see the Tamatoa 6-drop, just to the fact that all his popsicles are back in his discard now, so he can get it back just by throwing it down and then drawing some more cards with harm. Yeah, at this point, like, the Emerald Steel player unfortunately is in the top deck mode. He has Captain Hook on there, so it's not looking too good. Yes, he sure has the lore lead right now, but again, when it comes to Ruby Sapphire, things can turn around in just like that, right? All you need is like a dime, a big drop Tamatoa, and things are gonna go south pretty quick. Top stack a Chinpo, interesting. In my previous Emerald Steel builds, I've never played around with Chinpo personally. I think it's a little bit too slow in my opinion. Like, I'd rather play the Pluto because it comes down one turn quicker and protects your Diablo, right? Because I believe Pluto is a 4-drop. So therefore, if you're on the play, the Pluto will come down one turn earlier than like an Elsa 5-drop, right? Protecting your Diablo from getting exerted and rushed down. Yeah, it just looks like, you know, Ruby Sapphire is almost in that like tier 0 range, I feel like. Like, I feel like Ruby Sapphire almost has like that 65-35 win rate when it comes to the rest of the meta decks, and probably has a lot higher representation and a lot higher win rate. What do you guys think about, you know, always seeing Ruby Sapphire at the top? Like, it's always kind of been the top 3, top 4 decks that always show up in every meta, right? Like, even last meta, we saw that Ruby Sapphire was like, incredibly prevalent. What do you guys think about like a rotation or, you know, ban list? Personally, for me, it's like I would always prefer a ban list, you know, just because I'm coming from Yu-Gi-Oh! And a little bit biased in that way, but obviously, you know, due to the fact that a lot of us are pretty passionate about, you know, collecting cards and buying product, that we don't want to lose value when it comes to having all these cards rotated out. Because I think Lorcana, you know, is definitely not at that spot where Pokemon is yet, because Pokemon, you know, has rotations, but at least a lot of their like higher end rarity cards in every set does retain value, right? Just because people just love collecting them and getting them graded. Whereas I feel like when it comes to Lorcana, because we're very limited on the different types of rarities that you can get, really all that's probably going to retain value would be cold foil legendaries and enchanteds, right? And even then, it's like if all these cards are rotated out, there's really no point of, you know, having cold foil legendaries, right? Unless the potential of having all these legendaries getting reprinted out in the future when they get rotated back in, right? Because that could possibly happen. It's like they could rotate, you know, set 1, set 2, set 3 out, and then maybe in a later set they could reprint specific cards in those sets, right? Therefore allowing you to replay a lot of the legendaries that you've had before. All right, so looking back at this game here, that doesn't look like the Emerald Steel player was able to do it, unfortunately. Just because, yeah, like the Ruby Sapphire just had way too much stuff on the board. And we just weren't able to see any like good Emerald cards that allows you to draw, right? Like we saw the Merfolk, but it got taken out right away. We weren't able to establish a Prince John in a discard, a Diablo Shift. We weren't able to establish, you know, an Ursula. But that's just the way that it goes sometimes, right? Like, at the end of the day, yes, we want to see, you know, the dream line of having, you know, 1-drop Diablo, turn 2 Ursula, 2-drop, shift in a Diablo, turn 3 Prince John, and sing Sudden Chill. But a lot of times in reality, that doesn't actually happen, right? And that's why there's also the mulligan system that helps you get some of those lines a little bit more consistent. But also keep in mind, we're also playing Emerald Steel, meaning that there's a lot of, it's a combo deck, right? So we need a lot of pieces to kind of make things work. Whereas when it comes to the Ruby Sapphire decks, they have so many cards that actually help you filter through your deck to find the cards that you need to make it a lot more consistent. Things like Develop Your Brain, Vision, Grammatala, How Far I'll Go, right? A lot of these cards are allowing you to look at least 2 cards from the top of your deck and then reshaping your hand in a way, right? Whereas like cards like, or the decks like Emerald Steel really rely on disrupting your opponent's game plan by destroying their hand and then taking advantage of your card draw with Diablo and allowing themselves to draw, right, to keep up with the advantage and then keep disrupting and controlling the game in that way. All right, so Emerald Steel did lose game 1, but now they are going to be on the play on game 2. And again, we just want to be able to see the Emerald Steel deck get into a Diablo and get into a Diablo Shift. That's what we're hard mulliganing for. And that's what we're going to be looking for a lot of the times, right? Like, I don't think there's any one game that I've played Emerald Steel against that we're not looking for a Diablo lineup, unless, again, we're going maybe on the draw and you know that there are going to be a lot of cards that could come down that would take out the Diablo Shift. But again, you're also hoping that they will have it as well. So it's a big gamble, right? So unfortunately, it looks like the Emerald Steel player did not get a 1-drop. Oh my gosh. No Merfolk, no Diablo. But the Ruby Sapphire player, again, was able to get that Popsicle. And let's see if we're able to maybe... I'm rooting for the Emerald Steel player here, honestly, just because I'm an Emerald Steel player myself. It's just so painful to watch, you know, when you're not able to actually play, because there are times as well that playing with Emerald Steel that you could have a handful of uninkables and it just, you know, you have nothing to ink and you want to play more than 1 card per turn, but you really can't. So it's a very tricky deck, that's for sure. Okay, so we see the morph being dropped here, and that's a really nice enchanted morph. So we're hoping to see maybe a Beast Tragic Hero come down the next turn. And if we could see that, then that would definitely make up the turn 1 not having any 1-drop. Just because in this particular matchup, Beast Tragic Hero is incredibly strong early game, just because, you know, again, Brawl can't take it out. And you would have to really establish, you know, like a Sapphire Coil, or maybe in mid-game have that Medusa, right? But again, like, we're talking about early game here. So early game Tragic Hero is incredibly strong, with not that many outs at all. So Beast does come down, and now it's very crucial to know that, you know, Beast only gets that draw when it does not have any damage. So the unfortunate part about Beast is that, you know, when you throw it down like that, it is able to be able to quest or even sing right away. But the problem is that if the opponent has characters on board, you don't want to do that, because for sure they're going to challenge into it and throw damage on there. And again, Beast is mainly there as a supplemental card draw engine. Okay, so the Hiram comes down. gets rid of that Popsicle, allowing the Ruby Sapphire player to draw 2 cards. Having Muses at this moment would be really nice. Because if Muses comes down, and let's just say you drop, you know, we don't talk about Bruno by singing the Beast, you could take out both Hiram and Teeple, essentially. Okay, so he plays the Lawrence in the Merfolk and passes turn. Okay. Plays a Vitalosphere. Cracks it right away with Hiram. Yeah, we really need to see some sort of discard happen. That Hiram is just way too powerful. Do you guys think that if Hiram got errated, that it would fix the Sapphire problem right now? Because Ruby Sapphire and Sapphire Steel are the top contending decks this meta, this format. And Hiram, just due to the fact that it's such a high willpower, very hard to get rid of. And he's able to just get you 2 cards turn after turn after turn. Yes, you have to have, you know, an item on the field to use its ability, but again, you have cards like Tamatoa that gets back those items, right? And really all Hiram needs to do is maybe resolve its ability at least twice in the game to really utilize, you know, its ability on gaining light card advantage. And then aside from that, like, you should probably be way ahead of the game from there. It just seems like kind of too broken, you know? Like, I think if it was maybe a 5-drop, definitely would feel a lot more fair. So another Bruno comes down. Like, he, at this point, like, he has to get rid of the Hiram somehow. He has to slow down the Hiram, right? Rolls 2 dice because he has more than 6 cards in his hand. And takes out the Sapphire Coil. Honestly, like, everything in the Ruby Sapphire's hand is just incredibly powerful, right? Like, Ruby Sapphire plus a Sisu or Brawl will take out Beast. Like, the Sapphire Coil, I mean. Like, Sapphire Coil is just such a good card. The fact that it's also inkable as well. Plays the Dock. Plays another Dock. Oh my gosh, so he had 2 Docks stuck in the hand. So he played 2 Dock, not utilizing the Dock's draw for any of them, just because, you know, he has 2 cards in his hand, and those cards could be very good cards too. And he obviously needs just board presence, but it is very dangerous if you don't have another Dock in your hand, just because, again, he could just shift on a Sisu and goodbye board, right? Yeah, personally for me in my Emerald Steel list, I stopped playing Dock as much as I love Dock. But just due to the fact that, like, you know, having so many uninkables in your hand sometimes just feels really bad, right? Like, Doc's uninkable, Calhoun's uninkable, Prince John's uninkable, Diablo's uninkable, right? So you just have so many uninkable cards that are also, again, like, pretty expensive too in an Emerald Steel deck because you don't ink that much. And I just hate playing like 1 card turn after turn. It just feels very slow. It feels too fair. But of course, like, you know, when Emerald Steel pops off and you don't have an out to Diablo, like, that's when it feels, you know, the exact opposite, right? Okay, so we have another Dock coming down. 3 Docks! Oh my gosh. 3 Docks. At least he gets the draw for this one. Yeah, I've definitely been noticing a lot more Emerald Steel players in my local meta. And I don't think it's a bad choice at all, right? Because again, like, yeah, sure, you're unfavored in this matchup, but I feel like there's not too many outs to Diablo compared to last set, where everyone was playing evasive threats, right? Like Elsas and Genies and stuff. So Lucifer comes down, and essentially what it does is you could discard 2 cards or 1 action. So it's like a delinquent duel if you don't have an action. Unfortunately, there wasn't a Prince John, established on the board, so there's no draw that gets combined with that. But Lucifer is an incredibly strong card. It is quite weak, but again, like if you're able to rip 2 cards out of your opponent's hand and get them one step closer to being on top deck mode, that's how Emerald Steel controls the game, right? So we see a B prep come down and just wipes everything on the board, and now that cleans out everything and makes it safe for the Ruby Sapphire player to drop the Tamatoa, adding back probably a Popsicle, yeah, and a Vitalisphere as well. Therefore, that any Maui Half Shark that gets top deck, if there's any exerted cards on the opposing board, Vitalisphere is just going to give that rush right away, giving that Ruby Sapphire player more cards that they can utilize in their discard. At this point, we're digging because, yeah, Storm comes down, deals two damage to Tamatoa, but really not that much you can do at this point. That's another reason why, like, I don't personally like to run too many 1-drops in this particular type of deck, because you could not have that much of a hand pretty often, and you don't want to be top decking Captain Hooks or Merfolks on an established board, right? It's already bad enough that you have to top deck a Diablo 1-drop sometimes, and you just want every card that you draw to be good. And you just want cards that you draw to stick around, which is why I'm still playing Muses, because again, Muses has Ward, Prince John has Ward, right? So they're guaranteed to stick around unless, again, like a big board wipe comes down. Oh, Great Stone Dragon, interesting. Great Stone Dragon's actually a really good tech card in this particular matchup. Just because if Emerald Steel tries to discard your hand away, you just discard your bigger characters that you don't want anymore, and you'd be essentially able to use them later as ink with Great Stone Dragon. It feels your discard, right? With more characters. Yeah, Ruby Sapphire is just so dominant. Both games, game 1 and game 2, he was just in control the whole entire time. But yes, to be fair, the Emerald Steel player on both games didn't really see too many good cards like, Diablo and stuff. So it definitely slowed him down quite a bit. Yeah, and I see oh yeah, that's a Maui Half Shark. Maui Half Shark with a Vitalisphere. So Ruby Sapphire player has like a setup going on. And he drops a double Calhoun, making it a triple Calhoun. Oh gosh. Is there even any Emerald cards in this deck? We see triple Smees being dropped, double Captain Hooks, triple Calhouns. Oh my goodness. I feel like we need a pile shuffle. Yeah, when I'm playing Emerald Steel, I try my best to power shuffle every game as much as I can, unless I don't have time. Just due to the fact that, like, again, like, you want to have all your cards being evenly distributed and not so clumped up like this, right? Like, you don't even want your Diablos and Prince Johns clumping up together. Like, sure, like, cards in pairs or in triplets can be really devastating when you're drawing them turn after turn, but in this case here, right, drawing Calhouns, they're uninkable. They're really not doing that much because, again, you're not questing because of Maui Half Shark. I think Calhoun's a great card, don't get me wrong. I just don't think it's meant for the Emerald Steel deck because you're not really a challenge deck. Yes, Emerald Steel has struggled quite a bit in the past on having more cards that allow you to gain lore, but just due to the fact that Calhoun doesn't have too much synergy, aside from maybe putting it in a cove, I think there's like other options that the Emerald Steel decks can explore these days. So Diablo comes down, takes a look at the Ruby Sapphire hand. He's probably thinking like, yeah, I'm cooked. Because again, like the one drop Diablo gets top deck, right? So like top deck after top deck, we're not seeing anything here that we can use. And that's the problem with playing lower to the ground dock decks, right? It's like dock is good because again, you want to play lower to the ground so that way you can just throw everything on the board and keep nothing in hand and just keep utilizing dock, right? But as you see in this game, there was like 2-3 docks being drawn, but only one of them was able to be resolved, right? So when you see all those docks in a row like that, it practically makes the rest of your deck very, very weak now moving forward and later in the game. So it looks like that dragon, Great Stone Dragon, is just coming down turn after turn, getting you one additional ink, allowing you to ink any character in your discard there, even if it comes down exerted. But the thing is with Ruby Sapphire is that later into like mid to late game, you're gonna have a lot of cards in your hand, just due to the fact of Tamatoa, Maui Half Shark, Hirems, right? There's just so much stuff in your hand that like waiting one turn to play out more and more cards from your hand is not going to hinder you at all, especially when you have so much control in the form of Be Prepareds, Big Sisus, Vitalispheres, and Maui Half Sharks, right? I'm surprised we haven't seen like a Lucky Dime come down yet. Oof, we have the Pirate's Life coming down, and that's it. Yep, looks like he just finishes it off there with a double Maui Half Shark. That's insane. But yeah, thanks for tuning in this match, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, regardless of the turnouts. I will be posting more matchups this week, so stay tuned. Again, like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. Have a good one.